Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Seattle Kingdome in Seattle, Washington for another edition of the United States Hot Rod Association's Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Championship Series, all brought to you by Campbell. I'm Bret, Kepner, along with Kelly O'Neill. We'll be presenting one of the first of these new Camel Mudded Monster National Championship Series events here today. And indeed, this should be a killer, Kelly.
That's right, Bret. We're looking forward to some really exciting action tonight. The fans are really excited, and we're ready for things to get underway.
Well, that's for sure, Kelly. We've got an incredible lineup of mud racing and monster truck superstars here for one of the very first of the new Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck Series events that culminates in a $100,000 points fund at the end of the 1990 season. In fact, earlier, Kelly had a chance to talk to one of the gentlemen certainly partly responsible for this incredible new series, Larry Kiger, one of the team managers for Camel's racing efforts.
With me is Larry Kiger. Larry is the team manager for Camel Mud and Monster Racing Series. And Larry, the drivers are really excited about Camel being the new sponsor for the series this year, and the fact that there's a $100,000 purse up for grabs. What made Camel decide to get into mud and monster racing?
We feel like the timing was right with the competition at the level it is now. We feel like with the interjection of our sponsorship that we can raise that level of competition even further. With the teaming of SRO PACE and the United States Hot Rod Association as our sanctioning body, we feel like it's a can't-miss team and a can't-miss situation. So we're just very, very happy to be part of the sport.
Well, as I said before, there is a $100,000 purse up for grabs, and this is based on a point system. Can you tell us how that point system, how do you feel it's going to affect the series this year?
Yes, the Camel Mud and Monster Series in 1990 has posted a $100,000. $50,000 will be awarded in the monster truck category. $25,000 will be awarded in our series-long competition in the mud racing category. At each venue, we will award $1,000 to the fastest mud racer in what is going to be called the Camel Shootout competition, and we feel like that's going to add quite a bit of excitement to an already exciting class of mud racing.
Well, Larry, we are very happy to be affiliated with Camel, and we are all looking forward to the most exciting year yet in mud and monster racing.
Well, this event should indeed prove to be one of the biggest and best of this brand new U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck Tour, and Kelly will be kicking it off in just a minute.
That's right, Bret, so stay with us, because coming up next is the qualifying rounds for monster trucks here in the Seattle Kingdome. Don't go away.
Seattle Kingdome in Seattle, Washington, as we prepare to kick things off at this edition of the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Championship Series. Kelly, it looks like we're ready for monster truck qualifying.
That's right. We start off the qualifying action with Gary Sarton in the Skull Bandit, and right along with him is Randy Lynn in the Hot Tempered Jeep, and this is Randy's first time out, and of course we'd like to mention that it is a lady, so a lot of the lady fans are really standing behind her and hoping she does a good job.
It'll be interesting to see how the new racer does in the brand new Jeep Monster machine. And of course, Gary Sarton with the Skull Bandit, always one of the toughest on the national event tour. Now we're qualifying for 8 available positions here in this one-shot qualifying round. This is the only chance they'll get to place themselves in the field. You have to wonder what Randy Lynn is thinking about in front of her hometown fans, the Aberdeen, Washington lady looking up against one of the toughest there in the other lane. The green flag drops, and look at Sarton drive away. Tremendous air, a little bit of a rough landing as Randy Lynn finally makes it over the cars. Kelly, I'd say Randy was taken a little bit conservative there.
Yeah, definitely a disappointing run for Randy there, and especially in front of the hometown fans. That would be a little bit rough.
Well, she was more concerned with doing things properly during this qualifying round than going out and getting a little too radical. Gary Sarton, the Skull Bandit, receives an elapsed time of 4.20 seconds. The big black Chevrolet from the Los Angeles, California area indeed is one of the favorites coming into this event. You know, Gary Sarton is no newcomer to this particular sport. He's won several U.S. Hot Rod Association national event titles, and on this particular hit, as the first man out in qualifying, Gary puts it way up in the air. That's not necessarily something you want to do, Kelly, during this type of competition. Look at that landing.
Well, flying through the air like that is definitely not good 4 times, but it does make some exciting action for the fans.
Exactly. It's a very, very spectacular maneuver, but of course, the closer you can keep the machine to the ground, the quicker your elapsed time is going to be. Sarton will be probably happy with that 4.20 second elapsed time, while the lady from Aberdeen, Washington, receives a 7.70 second clocking. Well, here's a guy who will definitely be trying to put on a show in front of the hometown fans, Kelly. Jeff Faintner out of Yakima, Washington. We've seen him a bunch of times on ESPN's coverage of U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel events, and he is definitely notorious for his craziness.
Yeah, Jeff is in the high voltage Jeep, and this ought to be really exciting. He gets a little crazy.
He debuted this car at a particular event of the U.S. Auto Association Tour in 1989 in Oklahoma City. And as a matter of fact, in that debut, it won. Look at this thing leave the starting line, actually carrying the wheels. Tremendous air for Boehner, and what a landing, as the crowd loves every minute of that one. An excellent, excellent pass. In fact, a lot quicker than I think Kelly people thought he was going to go. You can see the machine actually picked the front wheels up on the starting line launch, and when he hits the first set of cars, tremendous amount of air. And as always, that short wheelbase Jeep comes down a little sideways, and those tires just send it back up over and over on every attempt at landing. What a ride. And the elapsed time, 3.76 seconds. That's going to be incredibly tough to beat.
Next up in line is Taurus. He's driven by Kirk Frankish, and he's from Canada. And he's been around for a long time. Should be exciting run.
It's true. He just purchased this truck from the Willman family in Illinois. This is one of the original heavyweight Tauruses, 15,000 pounds plus for this Chevrolet. You can see that Frankish decides to keep it a little bit slower, a little bit more conservative, to keep that nose on the ground. And when he hits the first set of cars, you won't see that much air underneath these tires, and that's the objective here, to try and improve on the elapsed time. And considering that Frankish knows that he's probably going to be able to qualify if he just plays the cards right, he doesn't have to push this machine yet. And when he does in eliminations, it's going to be a wilder ride because of the weight. The elapsed time, 5.61 seconds, should put the Calgary, Alberta racer into the field.
Coming up next, we've got Hot Stuff. This is driven by Todd Blazer, and Todd is from Milwaukee.
That particular Jeep is Jeff Boehner's old Hot Stuff Jeep. This is the machine that you saw him so many times on ESPN's coverage last year of U.S. Auto Association events. Blazer is brand new. Used to be a crew chief for several monster truck teams out of California. He makes his solo effort. A lot of air there, but a beautiful job landing that thing. I'll tell you what, that was definitely a crossed-up situation at the end of the cars, and this rookie, his first year of competition, may have just put down a statement about his driving skills. Tell you what, very seldom do you see a brand new driver come out and handle a situation like that. In fact, very seldom do you see a brand new driver come out and take chances like that. You'll see on this slow motion replay of the first hit that he was definitely not light-footing it. Tremendous amount of air, and there's that Jeep tendency with the torque of the engine to drop the left front side of the car first. And indeed, when it comes down on one corner, you're in for a ride. He manages to control it perfectly.
He should be real happy with this. He got 4.99 on his elapsed time, so he should definitely be pleased.
I wouldn't be surprised if that held up for one of the top 4 spots.
Coming up next online is Warren Davis in Barefoot.
Again, Warren Davis is driving a relatively new machine for him. The big Barefoot Chevrolet is one of the heavier ones out there as well. And he again takes a very, very conservative approach, but that's pretty much what you want to do in this situation. It's one thing to go out and put on a show for the fans, but it's another to qualify for one of these Camel Mud Monster Series events. And indeed, if you want to get into the program, you're going to take it easy. And you can see the starting line launch was definitely nowhere near under full power. In fact, it almost sounded like there might have been a fuel delivery problem. But Davis, so far, has the straightest line down this 150-foot course. You can see a little bit of engine misfiring there in the exhaust headers coming up through the hood. There was some fuel delivery problems on that run.
And he should be happy with this time, though. 4.85 for Warren Davis in Barefoot.
I'll tell you what, if that truck can run that fast even with engine problems, he's going to be somebody to contend with during actual elimination. Considering that truck is so heavy, Warren Davis, the new Montana pilot of the Barefoot Chevy, should be tough. Here's a guy that's been around for a long time.
Up next online is Monster Mash. This is Mike Welch, and he's from Washington also. This is going to be interesting. It's pretty heavy.
It is heavy. As a matter of fact, he's done everything he can to lighten it up, but you can see even on that starting line launch, the Chevrolet power plant in this early model Ford is still lacking just a little bit compared to some of the new supercharged fuel-injected motors. As you can see, he takes this machine over the course basically in the kind of fashion that he was looking for. I think that Mike Welch's biggest concern at this event is going to be consistency. I think he'll probably take the course as evenly and as conservatively as he can even during competition, but he's going to be trying to save the equipment. Now, you'll watch when he hits the cars. He gets the front end up enough to land about the third car down, and then he reapplies the throttle, takes it through very evenly.
Monster Mash had, though, a disappointing lap time. It was 6.62. But what do you expect for something quite that heavy?
That's true. We're talking about an honest 18,000-pound vehicle, and if it gets him in the program, it's going to be good enough to qualify.
That's all it takes. Coming up next is everybody's favorite. This is Bigfoot, driven by Dean Patterson. This is always one that the crowd loves to watch.
I'll tell you what, Bob Chandler's Bigfoot team from St. Louis, Missouri is definitely intent on winning that $100,000 pot at the end of the rainbow for the 1990 Camel Mud Monster Series. This is Bigfoot number 7, but it's received a few innovations recently, exceptionally powerful new motor, and Dean Patterson is certainly one of the best drivers in Bob Chandler's stable. Watch for Patterson to make a picture-perfect run here, trying to keep this truck low to the ground. Leaves the starting line. Nice leap. A little bit rougher landing than I think Patterson probably would have liked, and that actually may have slowed the elapsed time a little bit. In fact, it may not be enough to threaten Jeff Bainter's 3.76-second leader.
Not a bad run, though. He didn't see much air.
I'll tell you, the initial hit was just about perfect. It was the landing, the actual landing of the truck near the very last car that sent the machine into a bounce that kept Patterson from reapplying the power that he needed to pick up the elapsed time. Watching the slow motion replay, the hit perfect. The truck still basically level. He comes down nicely, but the landing, actually hitting the butt of the landing ramp was the problem. Puts the machine up in the air several times, and he goes across the finish line a little bit slower than he certainly would have hoped.
And he probably isn't going to be quite as happy as he could have been with this one. It's lap time 5.49.
Well, believe it or not, it looks like Jeff Bainter and the high-voltage Jeep from Yakima may end up #1 qualifier in this field.
That would definitely be exciting for the fans here in Washington. Stay with us. We've got more exciting action coming up for you. The super modified mud racers are up next. Welcome back to the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Mud and Monster Truck Racing Championships in the Seattle Kingdome, brought to you in part by Kicker High Performance Auto Speakers by Stillwater Designs. Well, Bret, looks like that Jeff Bainter actually pulled it off.
It's absolutely incredible. In front of the hometown fans, the incredible high-voltage Jeep is #1 qualifier in this incredible field. Looking at the way qualifying ended up, the good news is that Jeff was #1 qualifier. The bad news is that he has to race Gene Patterson and Bigfoot in the very first pair of the very first round. It'll be the Barefoot Chevrolet taking on Mike Welch's Monster Mash Chevy-powered Ford, and then the Hot Stuff Jeep with brand-new driver Todd Blazer behind the wheel will take on the brand-new Hot Tempered Jeep with lady driver Randy Lynn from Aberdeen, Washington behind the wheel of that machine. And then, of course, Gary Sargent, the Skull Bandit, takes on the Canadian Taurus Chevrolet, and the crowd is ready.
Looks like the crowd is really getting prepared because things get a little noisy when the mud racers get out there. And looks like Dad's got his ears covered.
And rightfully so, the super modified mud racers are now coming out for their qualifying round for 4 available positions for the brand new Camel Shootout.
Starting the action off for us will be Tom Nias in Rude Awakening. And alongside of him is Mud Dancer, driven by Jim Berg. He's from Seattle, Washington, so he is also in front of the hometown crowd.
I'll tell you, Tom Nias in the near lane with the Rude Awakening Ford Ranger. That is one of the prettiest mud racers we have seen in this new 1990 season. It's powered by a Ford small block with a supercharger and fuel injector system. And this driver, Jim Berg, in the Mud Dancer Jeep CJ Funny car using a carbureted Chevrolet engine. By far, one of the most consistent racers in the northwestern part of the country. What a pass for the small block Ford, but unbelievably enough, he can't stop the thing as he slides over the disqualification line down at the finish line. I cannot believe I saw that. We have about 80 foot of shutdown area here for this 80-foot long pit. Here you see Jim Berg leading the starting line in the Mud Dancer, an entry that is known for its consistency in the Northwest. As the first driver out, he hits a lot of that water that's accumulated on top of the mud. But watch the front end come up on top of the mud there near the finish line. After a rather dismal starting line launch, Berg manages to salvage it with a pretty decent top end, Kelly.
He should be pretty happy with this. He had a elapsed time of 2.9 seconds. He should be rather happy.
Well, at 2.90 seconds, I don't know if that's exactly the best we can expect here this particular event. Let's look at the starting line launch of the Ford. Left front wheel in the air. Look at Tom Nias steering this Ranger to keep it inbounds during the actual run. Picture-perfect run for the supercharged small block Ford. Now, at this point, I presume the brakes are so wet that Nias cannot stop this thing. Watch the white line on the concrete shutdown area. That's the disqualification mark. He rolls right over it. That's an automatic DQ at U.S. Hot Rod Association Camel Racing. What a disappointment.
Coming up next in mud racing action is Bog Hog, driven by Keith Horton. And he is a Washington native, another Washington native. It's Jim Kimball, and he's driving the Eagle's Nest.
I'll tell you, between these two vehicles, you couldn't ask for 2 more unusual super modified mud racers. Jim Kimball's machine, a very, very short wheelbase, almost stock appearing Jeep CJ. The Bog Hog, an original Willys all-steel pickup truck with Chevrolet motivation and nitrous oxide injection. Inching forward to the starting line, in this particular duel, the Bog Hog and the Eagle's Nest Jeep CJ, a tremendous explosion on the starting line for Keith Horton. If I had to guess, I'd say that was a nitrous oxide explosion par excellence on the starting line. And obviously, Keith is mighty upset. The safety crew's going up. This will probably end up being a single run for Jim Kimball here. There you see Keith Horton out of the cockpit and checking out the damage. He's looking at the top of the engine there. I would certainly suspect that was an intake valve hanging open and causing an explosion inside the intake manifold, better known as a nitrous oxide explosion. That's a tough break for a machine that has been at this event literally year in and year out.
What a disappointment, not even getting across the starting line.
Now it's going to be a solo run for Jim Kimball. He has everything to himself here, picking up the left front wheel, and then something goes wrong, and Kimball is obviously upset. What a bizarre pair of this particular battle here at the Seattle Kingdome. The Camel Mud Racing Series getting off to an outrageous start. An explosion for Keith Horton on the starting line. Kimball with a tremendously hard starting line launch. Then he runs into problems.
Definitely not with mud racing action.
Watch this slow motion replay. The truck is idling, and then that incredible explosion for Keith Horton. Like I said, an intake valve hanging open, spark plug igniting the fuel, gas, and nitrous oxide mixture in the manifold, blowing the air cleaner completely apart on the starting line. What an explosion for Keith Horton. Now watch Jim Kimball picking up the wheels perfectly. He was on an excellent run. And then all of a sudden, no power. The thing nosedives. And we've got a tremendous fire there. I'll tell you, you couldn't see that on the first initial shot of that run, but a tremendous explosion. The bottom end of the motor going big time south. And even though Kimball gets thumbs up to the crowd.
You're lucky enough to get a front row seat at one of these events, and you would definitely feel all of the thunder, and he definitely was. Coming up next in mud racing action is Risky Business, driven by Roger Bozell. He's out of Kent, Washington.
Tell you what, this is a brand new mud racer, another all fiberglass Jeep CJ funny car that is definitely state of the art. You can see the drag racing influence in that funny car style roll cage. There's a real good shot at the tachometer and all the electrical switches that control just about everything going on underneath that fiberglass body. And indeed, Bozell is certainly one of the new favorites here this weekend. Although this machine is relatively unproven in the Camel Mud Monster Series, this should be one of the toughest vehicles here this weekend. Big block Chevrolet motivation.
Running alongside of Risky Business is Deja Vu, driven by Ken Tobin.
Indeed, this is really just the opposite of what we saw with Roger Bozell's. I definitely would like to know where Ken Tobin got some of his chassis construction ideas. This thing a very, very high center of gravity. So he did a pretty tremendous job of retaining a lot of the stock appearance of the 1923 Ford Model T that this thing is based on. See the wing on the roll cage there, very narrow tread. It's a pretty strange ride, and it is definitely overheating as he waits for Roger Bozell to move into stage. Bozell, in the meantime, looks like he may have troubles even keeping the Risky Business Jeep running. And our starter down on the starting line may indeed elect to send Tobin on a solo pass here. See what Bozell elects to do. As you can see in the far lane, the Deja Vu machine is literally starting to cook. Finally, Bozell, the Risky Business Jeep, moves into the staging beams, and we're ready to send this pair. Great launch for the Risky Business Jeep. Tremendous top-end charge, and indeed, that machine came right around like the crowd expected it to. Bozell's nitrous Chevrolet, an extremely strong run. And we've got an engine fire in the other lane. Ken Tobin of the Deja Vu 23T apparently explodes one big time just past the finish line. The safety crew's right there to put out the fire. This is turning into a pretty incredible event, already with fires and engine explosions everywhere you look. Coming off the starting line, Tobin's machine seemed to be hooking up fine, although it did make a hard left over to the outer berm. He gets out of the throttle, plants his right foot again. You can see that engine cooking. Big block Chevrolet, carbureted with nitrous oxide injection, definitely took the brunt of that heated burn down on the starting line. Then once he gets through into the shutdown area, he throws up the face mask, and you can just start to see the engine oil coming down on the exhaust headers on the left side of the engine. And indeed, as soon as it stopped and as soon as that oil started getting up to flash point, it did. Meanwhile, over the other side of the track, the Risky Business Jeep of Roger Bozell looked like it had a beautiful run going. This thing skimming the surface exactly the way it's supposed to be done. Textbook pass. And coasting through the shutdown area, stopping well short of that disqualification boundary down on the top end at 2.65 seconds. That'll be the quickest elapsed time so far, Kelly.
Yeah, with Deja Vu, he had a lap time of 2.87 seconds, but I don't believe we'll be seeing him again tonight. Don't go away. We have more super modified mud racing action coming up from the Seattle Kingdome.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Seattle Kingdome in Seattle, Washington, as we get ready to continue action here at the USHRA Association's Camel Mud Racing and Monster Truck National Championship Series. All brought to you in part by Kicker Speakers from Stillwater Designs. We've still got more monster truck racing to go. In fact, the first round of eliminations. But right now, we have to continue with super modified mud racing qualifying, which has already proven to be the wildest stuff we've seen in quite some time, Kelly.
Looks like it's going to be some more exciting action. Online right now is Wild Willie, driven by Van Jepsen. And in the other lane is Hocus Pocus, driven by Lyle Hancock.
Van Jepsen out of Utah with the short wheelbase early model Willys Jeep truck. Indeed, is running with a lot more weight disadvantage than most of these drivers would like. This is an honest 2,800-pound vehicle, mighty heavy for this category, where the hitters are weighing in around 1,900 pounds, 2,000 pounds. Creeping ever so slowly to the starting line. Look at Jepsen in the far lane telling his opponent to get up there and stage her. He's going to make a single pass on his own. For some reason, Van Jepsen just can't seem to find the starting line area. He is still not fully staged. Jepsen overheating, finally leaves the starting line on the green light, but runs out of power just before the finish line. Jepsen, in the meantime, makes a clean pass despite that rather elongated starting line situation. When Van Jepsen did finally leave the starting line, it looked like it was receiving power pretty well. In fact, you can even see some tire distortion there as these wheels hit at an honest 160-mile-per-hour tire speed. Then motor problems right at the finish line. Not the steam coming out from the opening of the hood, but actually the smoke coming out of the exhaust headers indicated he may have had some problems down past the finish line, but he did indeed shut it down in time.
And he had a lap time there of 3.41, which certainly won't be good enough to get him into the Camel shootout tonight.
Not at this point. And in the other lane, the Hocus Pocus Jeep CJ Funny Car, despite a little twist there to the right-hand side of the course, indicated no problems three-quarter track. It wasn't until you see the smoke. It's not steam. That's honest engine smoke pouring out from underneath the cowling. Machine way down on power, literally coast across the finish line. When you consider his elapsed time at 3.31 seconds, that was going to be a heck of a run.
Coming up next in mud action is Craig Christensen from Utah, driving out of control. Alongside him is Sharon Tobin, and she's driving high spirits. We saw her husband a little bit earlier. This is the first husband and wife to compete.
That's right. For the first time in the history of the USHRA Association, we actually have a husband and wife team battling side by side. The high spirits, all steel-bodied pickup, leaves the line well behind the Jeep, but the out-of-control machine is just that, and Sharon Tobin gets the victory in this side-by-side battle. Her first side-by-side round win in USHRA Association Camel Mud Racing history. I'll tell you, no question that Christensen had a good run going, but you can see the rear end come completely around here. He's got the steering wheel cranked all the way over. You can see him working in that cockpit, but he had to get in and out of the throttle to keep from going out of bounds, and that certainly killed his effort.
He was definitely out of control, and he had a lap time of 3.80.
Well, while the Chevy-powered Jeep CJ Funny Car was having its problems, Sharon Tobin was on a pretty serious run in the other lane. Considering that this is a 3,000-pound machine utilizing Chevrolet power, she runs 3.29 seconds in this thing. And look at this lady drive. Perfectly straight. She corrects it even with a power drift down near the finish line. This lady definitely knows what she's doing. And as you can see, as she makes it into the shutdown area, she's certainly not having the problems that her husband has been having tonight.
Definitely not. That was an excellent run. But I'm still afraid that her time isn't enough to get her into the Camel shootout.
Well, we've seen Fords and Chevrolets in this event so far, and here's one for the Mopar fans. Out of Idaho, this thing is awesome. A Dodge Dakota pickup with real-life Chrysler power. This is
Chuck Ceccarelli in the down and dirty. Does a little interesting move there. I don't know if that's really going to help him much in racing, but it is interesting for the fans. Right alongside of Chuck is Captain America, driven by Terry Wilkes.
This is by far the strongest mud racer in the Northwest. This machine won this event 2 years ago. Holds the course record at 2.15 seconds, and without a doubt, this supercharged, fuel-injected Chevy-powered Jeep Funny Car is tough. The lady behind the wheel, like you said, Terry Wilkes out of Washington, is indeed one of the finest female racers this sport has ever known. Right now, the #1 spot at 2.65 seconds should be in serious jeopardy. Now, Ceccarelli in the far lane with that shortened, radical Dodge Dakota pickup is pretty much of an unknown quantity. Brand new entry in the U.S. Auto Association Camel Tour. I'm interested to see what this little Chrysler wedge-powered machine can do, especially against a machine as all-powerful as the Captain America Jeep. Believe it or not, the Dodge gets the whole shot, but look at Terry Wilkes from the top end, but she just crosses over the disqualification line. What a tragedy for this effort. By far a run that should have gotten her the #1 spot, just an inch or so over that line. You can see her sitting there. She is dejected.
What a disappointment. She had an excellent run.
Terry Wilkes off the starting line. Look at the chassis work on this thing. 2,000 horsepower. She plants it perfectly. Again, the left front tire just grazing the mud pit. A little bit of rough ride down there at the finish line, and that may have been the cause for her disqualification. Definitely bouncing, and when you're in the air, Kelly, you can't stop these things, and she slides across the line just by 2 feet.
I know she's definitely disappointed about that. It was an excellent run.
The elapsed time, 2.28 seconds, would have been good enough for the quickest run of this event. Now take a look at Ciccarelli. He was busy plowing through the pit. This machine's suffering from a little bit of a ground clearance problem. Can't even see it. Looks like it's been running over landmines down there at the finish line. Finally, the Mopar comes out of the pit. The elapsed time on that run, 3.19 seconds for the Chrysler product out of Utah.
Up next in mud racing action is Matt Holliday driving the Problem Child.
Tell you, if you want to see what the state-of-the-art in mud racing today looks like, all you have to do is look at the Problem Child machine out of Seattle. Short wheelbase, but still that omnipowerful, supercharged, fuel-injected big block Chevrolet power plant. That is certainly one of the sturdiest roll cages we've seen in U.S. Off-Road Association competition this year. The safety regulations on these machines make sure that you really have to try to get injured.
Going up against Matt is Bob Moran, and he's driving the Jumping Jack Flash.
Despite this machine's utilization of a carbureted Chevrolet power plant, this little Jeep is actually pretty darn quick. Matter of fact, 2 years ago at this event, Morant was second to the Captain America supercharged Jeep of Terry Wilkes, who we just saw disqualified. It'll take a run right now of 3.19 seconds or quicker to get into the top 4 in this battle. The Problem Child machine with a supercharged big block Chevy power plant leaves the line first, and problems big time for Jumpin' Jack Flash. Meanwhile, the Problem Child suffers no problems, but he can't stop the thing down there. Looking behind him, he realizes he's over, he's upset. Matt Holliday is not happy. That disqualification light has been a problem for these people.
I don't know what the problem is. They're having problems stopping, it looks like. It must be awfully slick at the end of the run.
It must be a combination of slick tires and wet brakes. That's all I can figure, because nobody's really crossed it at any kind of speed. I'll tell you, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Bob Moran having all kinds of problems. Look at this guy working for a living in the cockpit of this Jeep. He finally gets it straightened out, takes it across the finish line under power. Certainly he caught the brunt of the mud on this pit. Without a doubt, this guy is wet.
Definitely a rough ride with an elapsed time of 4.13 seconds.
It's not going to help Bob Moran out any. Take a look at the starting line launch for Matt Holliday. This thing is just beautiful. Running a little bit fat. You can see the excess fuel coming out of the exhaust pipe. But again, the front end comes up on top of the mud. Look at that tire distortion. They almost look like they're triangular down there at the finish line. A lot of steam as the mud comes up and hits the exhaust headers. There were no engine problems on that run. Now, he tries to lift the face mask, and I honestly think that may have been the biggest problem in trying to stop this car. He was so concerned with seeing where he was going, he didn't start the shutdown procedure as soon as he crossed the finish line. But boy, he knew it right there.
It was a beautiful run. He had a lap time of 3.10 seconds.
It would have been good enough to get him in the field, but it won't be good enough to get him in the field with that disqualification. You couldn't ask for a wilder qualifying session for this Camel Series shootout, but indeed, we've got more mud racing qualifying to go. I can't imagine getting any more incredible than it already has been.
But it's true, Brett. We do have more exciting action coming up with the first round eliminations of the monster trucks. So stay with us. Welcome back to the U.S. Hot Rod Association's Mud and Monster Racing Championships here in the Seattle Kingdome. Brett, we've seen some really exciting action here tonight.
I'll tell you, the monster truck battles, it seems like everything has gone pretty much according to plan.
Okay, online now we have the #1 qualifier, Jeff Baintner, in high voltage against Bigfoot, one of everyone's favorites.
Like we said, this is a good news, bad news situation for that man right there, Jeff Baintner. He qualifies #1 in front of his hometown audience, and now he has to race Bigfoot in the very first round. If he could pull off a defeat of the Big Blue Ford, it would be the biggest single moment of his life. He's already had so many incredible situations on our ESPN coverage of these events that he's already becoming almost a household name, despite his lack of very many national event wins, to be honest. In the meantime, the Bigfoot team is ready for blood on this one. Checking each driver, they're ready. They leave the line. Bigfoot with an early lead. Look at Baker. Unbelievable. Look at this driving job. Absolutely incredible. Stopping within inches of the wall. The crowd can't believe it, and rightfully so. He actually pulled it off, Kelly. He beat Bigfoot in the opening round.
Brett, Jeff has to be ecstatic about that.
Who couldn't be? Like when you can drive around Bigfoot, on the slow-motion replay, you can see that Bigfoot left the starting line first with an honest 5-foot advantage going into the on-ramp. Here you see Bigfoot take it to the air. Painter and the other side was even higher, but indeed took one of the rougher landings ever. As you can see, Gene Patterson actually had a beautiful, beautiful run here. A little bit of a bounce there at the finish line, though, putting him on his side, but I think he was steering away from Jeff Painter more than anything else.
And he lap time on that of 4.50 seconds. That was an excellent run for Bigfoot, but Jeff Boehner was taking the ride of his life in the other lane.
Look at this thing leave the starting line. Wheels up like a dragster, leaving the line now. When he hits the ramp, watch this thing take to the air. You want altitude? Take a look at this. Flash bulbs go off around the Kingdome. Now watch this landing. Every bit of weight of this vehicle on the right front tire. Painter almost noses the thing over. He actually pulled the right rear tire completely off the rim. Same thing with the left side on the second bounce. Still up on one tire as he tries to get to the brakes. Like I said, the brakes don't do you any good when the machine's in the air. He stopped it within inches of the wall. How close was it?
An unbelievably close race with Jeff Boehner having a time of 4.38 seconds, just 0.12 of a second faster than Bigfoot. Online now we have Barefoot and Monster Mash, the apt name for this truck.
Mike Wells, the Washington veteran, over in the far lane. And of course, Warren Davis out of Montana in the Barefoot Chevrolet. Both of these are big-time heavyweights. Big advantage in the horsepower department, though, goes to the blue Chevrolet. The yellow Monster Mash entry utilizing basically a single 4-barrel carbureted Chevrolet power plant that's putting about a 700 horsepower out, and there you see the difference. Warren Davis just drives away from Mike Welsh. I'll tell you what, the landing ramp on this track, if you don't hit it perfectly, you're going to slam the nose down hard enough that it's going to send you airborne in a bounce. I'll tell you, Mike Welsh has fans. Look at the people in the stands behind him cheering him on. It just was not to be here at the Seattle Kingdome on this particular run. Mike takes it across the cars, like I said earlier, in conservative fashion. It was nothing compared to this radical approach. It looked like Warren Davis may have figured out those fuel delivery problems that were plaguing him during qualifying. His qualifying a lap time, as a matter of fact, of 4.85 seconds may have fallen here, but look at these bounces. Again, if you don't hit that landing ramp just right, if you bring the rear tires up off the ground before the nose comes down, you will find yourself in a tricky situation here.
He definitely had a rough ride of 5.21 seconds, but it was good enough to beat Monster Mash.
Here we're looking at one of the more unusual innovations in this sport. Neon tubes that carry the electrical charge to the spark plugs in Randy Lynn's hot-tempered Jeep, Kelly.
Running alongside Randy is Todd Blazer in his hot stuff Jeep.
Remember, we talked about Todd being a rookie. This is, believe it or not, both these drivers' first season of racing. And very seldomly, you see side-by-side Jeeps. Blazer leaves the starting line and starts train lengthening the Aberdeen, Washington lady. If nothing else, she manages to keep it under control, trying to drive around Todd in the shutdown area, but at that point, the Wisconsin youngster had it under control.
Really was no contest there. Looks like Randy went for quite a bumpy ride.
Actually, it was surprising that she managed to put that much power into that machine. Like I said, her game plan at the start of this event, this being her first, was to take it easy, be very conservative, plan on the other driver making mistakes, and try to take advantage of that. As you can see, she knows what she's doing behind the wheel of this thing. Perfectly straight over the cars, does a good job without getting too much air, getting too radical. The only problem is that Todd Blazer got to the finish line long before she did.
She had a lap time there of 6.97 seconds.
Which, surprisingly, was an improvement from her qualifying effort of almost a second, so at least she's moving up. Here's Todd Blazer on his initial hit. This young man at the wheel of the truck that basically took Jeff Painter to stardom last year in the U.S. Hobbit Association's National Event Tour. You see him coming off the side of the landing ramp down there. That's something we didn't pick up at first. He does an excellent job of controlling this. Like I said, in qualifying, this young man knows exactly how to handle this extremely ill-handling Jeep.
And his lap time was 6.19 seconds. A nice ride there for Todd. Continuing the action now with Taurus. This is driven by Kurt Frankish of Canada. And he's always tough to beat.
Well, like I said, he's going to have to go up with some serious power to dethrone this man. This incredible machine, Gary Sargent's Skull Bandit, has been extremely strong, qualified in the #2 spot behind Jeff Painter. And one thing about Gary Sargent, Kelly, he is not afraid to put this thing into orbit if he has to get around the opponent.
Looks like we'll be seeing some straight action on this one.
Saw him during qualifying, put this thing literally 10 feet in the air. The Skull Bandit in the far lane moves it up. The Taurus entry out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, ready for the drop of the flag. Sargent gets the advantage and starts driving away from there. Landing almost on the landing ramp itself. Sargent manages to keep it under control, manhandling the truck after only one hard bounce. Take a look at this. This machine definitely flew over those cars. At that point, the Taurus machine was nowhere in sight. Look at this launch, the landing coming down 2 cars from the end. He actually hits it right on the crown of the landing ramp. A huge power stand as he gets back into the throttle. But after only 1 bounce, Kelly, he settles that thing down.
That's right, Bret. He had an incredible run of 4.53 seconds.
And it's certainly one of the quickest of eliminations so far. You really can't fault Kurt Frankish in the other lane. Again, using the conservatism that we talked about at the very beginning of the event, hoping that Sargent would make an error of some kind. He did not. He also had a pretty rough ride down there at the finish line. He did a beautiful job of regaining control of this thing. Superb driving by Gary Sargent in the Skull Bandit. He is looking exceptional in this event, but I think the crowd is still riding the emotional high of hometown boy Jeff Faintner beating Bigfoot in the very first round. That was indescribable.
Definitely some exciting action. Also, we have just received word that super modified mud racer Ken Tobin, he had the fire in his Deja Vu earlier in qualifying rounds, is going to be able to compete coming up in the Camel Shootout, and that's next, so stay with us. U.S. Hot Rod Association's Mud and Monster Racing Championships here in the Seattle Kingdome. Bret, we've seen some really exciting action here tonight.
I tell you, the monster truck battles, it seems like everything has gone pretty much according to plan. The lower qualifiers have advanced. The biggest surprise of this event has to be Jeff Faintner, the Yakima, Washington-based high-voltage Jeep. Beating Bigfoot in the first round of eliminations after qualifying #1 and certainly the toughest field of racers he's been involved in a long time has made this Campbell event something special. If you look at the way eliminations have progressed so far, you can see that Jeff Faintner, the low qualifier after beating Bigfoot, has to take on the Chevy version of that, Barefoot. And then the hot stuff Jeep Faintner's old ride takes on the Skull Bandit. Now, High Voltage and Skull Bandit, Faintner and Sargent were the 2 quickest winners of the first round. If you had to go on averages, it looks like those 2 will probably meet in the final, but we'll have to wait and see until the semifinals are completed. Now, meanwhile, we're getting ready to go into the Camel Shootout for the 4 quickest qualifiers in mud racing, but we have an interesting situation. Of the drivers that were able to return, only one of them was an original qualifier in the Quick 4. The other drivers have either burned up so much equipment, which we saw in the qualifying round, or were disqualified, and that sets up a history-making pairing in this very first battle, Kelly.
It definitely does, Bret. We've got Ken Tobin in Deja Vu and his wife, Sharon Tobin, in High Spirits. This will definitely be an interesting battle.
No question about it. I don't know what to think of this. Certainly Ken Tobin just coming back, as we pointed out, is a major, major accomplishment after that horrendous engine fire. He leaves the starting line. His wife is on her way as well at the finish line. Tobin, though, gets there first. He's thrilled. The visor comes up. The safety crew is there just in case we would have another fire. He's got a lot of smoke there. I don't believe it. The engine erupts into flames again, and the safety crew is there before it ever even happened.
They were prepared for it this time.
Absolutely unbelievable that that engine would explode the same way 2 different times. Ken Tobin runs through with another fireball at the finish line, and there you see his wife Sharon, who ran into her own problems at about the 10-foot mark just off the starting line. A tough break.
They were having bad luck all the way around for them.
We have an interesting situation here. Jim Berg is being told that his opponent, Chuck Ciccarelli in the Down and Dirty Chrysler, is unable to fire up and run, so Berg has to run quicker than 3:07 that we just saw Tobin run to win the Camel Shootout. This is one man against the clock for the entire championship battle here at the Seattle Kingdome. He must run quicker than 3.07 seconds to defeat Ken Tobin for the Camel Buck. Staging up.
I think he definitely has his work cut out for him on this one.
Tell you what, this pit has proven to be very, very difficult. We've only seen 3 2-second runs. The helmet visor comes down. Berg waits for the Christmas tree countdown, leaves the line, heads over to the outer berm, smoke from the engine, and he fails to even make it to the finish line. And that automatically hands the win to Ken Tobin's Deja Vu T-Roadster at 3.07 seconds. When was the last time you saw a guy have 2 separate engine fireballs and win an event?
And win the event. That's incredible. Coming up next, we're going to see if Jeff Faintner can pull off the Cinderella story of a lifetime when we have the semifinals of Monster Truck action here at the Seattle Kingdome. Mud and Monster Truck Racing Championships here in the Seattle Kingdome. And it's time now for the semifinals of Monster action.
It's true, and I should point out we just received word from down in the pit area here on the floor of the Seattle Kingdome that Jeff Faintner's high-voltage Jeep that has done so well is apparently starting to run into problems. The right rear tire on the machine is losing air at a very, very rapid pace. He's trying to keep it inflated, and now the engine is starting to overheat. So right now, Faintner has more than he would like on his mind going into his semifinal match with Barefoot.
Well, this is the man that Jeff Boehner has got to get around if he expects to be in the finals. This is Warren Davis in barefoot. Now, Jeff has been having some problems in his high-voltage Jeep, but despite all of that, we know he's going to give it his all in this run.
Certainly after the night he's had, he can't afford to let off. With Warren Davis improving ever so slightly each round with that bulky fuel delivery system, regardless of the problems that we talked about with Boehner, with the deflating right rear tire and the engine overheating, you can bet he's going to drive it all out to try and get around barefoot. I have to say the crowd is definitely on the Jeep side, but look at the Chevrolet pull away. Boehner sideways on the cars, and Warren Davis upsets the #1 qualifier. Look at him looking over his shoulder. Did I get him? You bet you got him, Warren, in a big, big way. The crowd is probably a little disappointed at this one, but the Chevy fans at least had something to cheer about.
That's right, Bret, but it was definitely disappointing for Jeff Boehner in his high-voltage Jeep.
I'll tell you what, he was big-time sideways going over those cars at the very end. Here's the launch. Boy, that's the strongest starting line lead we've seen so far from Warren Davis in barefoot. The hit, by far the most aggressive he's made. You can see Boehner having his problems in the other lane, but Warren Davis drives this thing out of a little bit of a dip on the right-hand side, and with one bounce takes it across the finish line easily for the #1 spot in the final round. Tremendous, tremendous race between these two guys, and I don't think the crowd was ready for the Chevrolet to come on quite that strong. There you see Warren Davis looking over his shoulder. Did I get him? He sure did. Warren Davis will advance to the final round. Now let's see if we can spot the problem on Boehner's run, what caused him to get so sideways. Still carrying the front wheels off the starting line. Boehner guiding the machine ever so straight up to the first hit. Everything seemed to be fine at that point. Comes down a little bit on the nose. Then it starts sliding off the side of the cars. And if you look at that right rear tire, sure enough, it is just about flat. The machine with a flat tire at half track, and Boehner kept driving it.
Well, Jeff Boehner may have lost out on that one, but he still has a stake in this action, if you can call it that. This is his old Hot Stuff Jeep, and it's driven now by Todd Blazer. And Todd is kind of exciting to watch in it, too. He's almost as crazy as Jeff is. Running alongside of Todd is Gary Sarton in the Skoal Bandit, which is always tough to beat.
It'll be an interesting battle. The #2 qualifier, the Skoal Bandit Chevrolet out of California. Sarton, as we pointed out, not afraid to take chances. See a determined look in that man's eyes as he sees a possible final round berth only 150 feet away. Todd Blazer, in the meantime, though, you have to admire this kid. His semi-final finish in the first race he's ever competed in on the U.S. Association Camel Tour. And if he can get around Sarton, we'll see another huge upset. You never know. We just saw the #1 qualifier lose. Maybe #2's number's up.
Could be. We'll have to wait and find out here.
Sarton inches forward to the starting line. Blazer already patiently waiting for him up there in the stage beams. The starter looking to clear the top end of the track. He'll spin around, point the flag at each driver, make sure they are ready for the flag drop. And when that green goes down, it's definitely time to get it underway. Checking the drivers. The starter waits to drop the flag. They're gone. Boy, Blazer rolling the start there. He's got the advantage, but look at Sarton moving in. Unbelievable finish. Sarton drives around a huge hole shot by the kid in the Jeep and puts the Skoal Chevrolet in the final round. Unreal.
Todd had an excellent run to begin with, but Gary Sarton really pulled that off.
That was by far the best run Todd's made in all 3 of his runs. Qualifying, first round, and even this losing battle have been picture perfect. But look at Sarton. The determined look still in his eye. He literally puts this Chevrolet into orbit. A lot of smoke from underneath as he over-revs the motor. Tremendously hard landing. Look at the stance of that truck going across the finish line. You have to remember he picked this up, as you just saw, by a couple of inches driving around the Jeep. That man can handle a monster truck. And you got to remember that's still a heavyweight vehicle. Blazer, in the meantime, got that rolling start. Didn't have the tire completely across the line to constitute a foul start, but boy, he looks like Jeff Boehner at the wheel of this old thing. Definitely no conservatism here as he puts the Jeep in the air. Nice landing, that short wheelbase making it get squirrely no matter what he does. Look at him looking over at the finish line to see if he can get around Sarton, but instead has to watch the Skoal Bandit Chevy drive around him by a matter of inches. Looking over his shoulder, no doubt wondering at that point whether or not he won it. I think the crowd response pretty much told him what the name of the game was. Well, even though Warren Davis managed to pick up the performance of barefoot substantially in that round, Kelly, at this point, I'd have to say Gary Sarton and the Skoal Bandit looks real good here at the Kingdome.
This thing will be really tough to beat. Stay with us. We've got the finals of monster truck action coming up next at the Seattle Kingdome. Hot Rod Association's Mud and Monster Truck Racing Championships here in the Seattle Kingdome. It's time now for the finals of the monster action. It's going to be exciting.
That's true, and Gary Sarton looks so good in the Skull Bandit. Even though Warren Davis has managed to cure his fuel delivery problems in barefoot, he's going to have to really come up with something to get around that incredible black Chevrolet from California.
We've got the Skull Bandit online, and barefoot. Should be a good race.
Yeah, I really don't think there's any partiality with the crowd at all either. I think they're about 50% rooting for one, 50% for the other. Side by side on the cars, absolutely perfect race. And Kelly, I don't think anybody could call that one. Our event director on the floor, George Carpenter, is probably watching the slow motion replay himself. Here we see they leave the starting line dead even. Barefoot pulls up on the ramp, then Sarton drives around in the air. Here comes Davis in barefoot as Sarton wheel stands again. They are absolutely side by side. Our event director, George Carpenter from the U.S. Hobbit Association, will have to make the decision based on a videotape replay. That's the official way it goes, Kelly. At U.S. Hobbit Association Racing, if it's too close to call visually, they use a videotape camera mounted directly at the finish line to call the winner. We'll just have to wait for the word.
Well, even watching the slow motion replay, I cannot tell who won that race. Bret, this is a real tribute to the sportsmanship of these drivers to go back and run this race again.
The flag drops again, side by side. Sarton, though, drives away for a full truck-length victory at the finish line. What a top-end charge Gary Sarton has in that machine. The crowd obviously going crazy, and Sarton himself says, hey, what did you expect? The Skull Bandit team picks up the victory here at the Seattle Kingdome as the crowd gives both drivers literally a standing ovation. The helmet comes off. What a battle.
Gary Sarton was able to pull it off. That was incredible action.